Someone had given her the notion she was an unwanted child. This serious idea had sunk into her subconscious, giving her a profound sense of inferiority and self-depreciation. It made her shy and backward, causing her to retreat into herself. She became lonely and unhappy and was, in fact, an underdeveloped personality. The cure for her condition was to revamp her life spiritually, especially her thinking, which process in time made her a well-liked person, by setting her personality free of herself. Countless other people, not particularly victims of deep, unconscious psychological conflicts, have never mastered the knack of being popular. They try hard enough. They even go to extremes, often acting in a manner they do not really enjoy, but which they employ only because of their intense desire to have people like them. Everywhere today we see people putting on an act because of their inordinate desire for popularity in the superficial sense in which the word is often used in modern society. The fact is that popularity can be attained by a few simple, natural, normal, and easily mastered techniques. Practice them diligently, and you can become a well-liked person. First, become a comfortable person, that is, one with whom people can associate without a sense of strain. Of some persons it is said, you can never quite get next to him. There is always a barrier that you can get over. A comfortable person is easygoing and natural. He has a pleasant, kindly, genial way about him. Being with him is not unlike wearing an old hat, or an old pair of shoes, or an easy old coat. A stiff, reserved, unresponsive individual never meshes into the group. He is always just a bit out of it. You never quite know how to take him, or how he will react. You just aren't easy like with him. Some young people were talking about her 17-year-old boy whom they liked very much. Of him they said, he is good company. He is a good sport. He is easy to be with. It is very important to cultivate the quality of being natural. Usually that sort of individual is large-souled. Little people who are much concerned about how you treat them, who are jealous of their place or position, who meticulously stand on their prerogatives, are stiff and easily offended. A man who is an outstanding example of these truths is James A. Parley, former Postmaster General of the United States. I met Mr. Parley for the first time a number of years ago. Months later I met him in a large crowd of people and he called me by name. Being human, I never forgot that, and it is one reason I have always liked Mr. Parley. An interesting incident illustrates the secret of this man, who is an expert in how to get people to like him. I was to speak in Philadelphia at a book and author luncheon along with Mr. Parley and two other authors. I did not actually witness the scene I am about to describe, as I was late in arriving, but my publisher did. The speakers at this luncheon were walking along the hotel corridor together, when they passed a colored maid standing by a cart loaded with sheets, towels, and other equipment with which she was servicing the rooms. She was paying no attention to this group of people as they turned aside to avoid her cart. Mr. Parley walked up to her, put out his hand, and said, "Hello, there. How are you? I am Jim Parley. What is your name? Glad to see you." My publisher looked back at her as the group passed down the hall. The girl's mouth was wide with astonishment and her face broke into a beautiful smile. It was an excellent example of how an unegotistical, comfortable, outgoing person is successful in personal relationships. A university psychology department conducted an analysis of the personality traits by which people are liked or disliked. 100 traits were scientifically analyzed, and it was reported that one must have 46 favorable traits in order to be liked. It is rather discouraging to realize that you must have so large a number of characteristics to be popular. Christianity, however, teaches that one basic trait will go far toward getting people to like you. That trait is a sincere and forthright interest in and love for people. Perhaps if you cultivate this basic trait, other traits will naturally develop. If you are not the comfortable type of person, suggest that you make a study of your personality with a view toward eliminating conscious and unconscious elements of strain which may exist. Do not assume that the reason other people do not like you is because of something wrong with them. Assume, instead, that the trouble is within yourself, and determine to find and eliminate it. This will require scrupulous honesty, and it may also involve the assistance of personality experts. The so-called scratchy elements in your personality may be qualities which you have taken on through the years. Perhaps they have been assumed defensively, or they may be the result of attitudes developed in your younger days. Regardless of origin, they can be eliminated by a scientific study of yourself, and by your recognition of the necessity for change followed by a process of personality rehabilitation. A man came to our clinic at the church seeking help in the problem of personal relationships. About 35 years of age, he was the type of person whom you would certainly look at twice, if not 3 times. He was splendidly proportioned and impressive. Superficially regarding him, it was surprising that people should not like him. but he proceeded to outline an unhappy and continuous set of circumstances and instances to illustrate his dismal failure in human relations. "I do my best," he explained. "I have tried to put into practice the rules I have been taught about getting along with people, but get nowhere with the effort. People just aren't like me, and what is more, I am aware of it." After talking with him, it was not difficult to understand the trouble. There was in its manner of speech a persistently critical attitude, thinly veiled but nonetheless apparent. He had an unattractive manner of pursing his lips which indicated a kind of primness or reproof for everybody, as if he felt just a bit superior and disdainful toward other people. In fact, there was about him a noticeable attitude of superiority. He was very rigid, with no flexibility of personality. "Isn't there some way to change myself, so that people will like me?" he demanded. "Isn't there some way I can stop unconsciously rubbing people the wrong way?" The young man was decidedly self-centered and egotistical. The person he really liked was himself. Every statement, every attitude was unconsciously measured in terms of how it reacted on himself. We had to teach him to love other people and to forget himself, which was of course a complete reversal of his development. It was vital, however, to the solution of his problem. I found that this young man was irritable with people and he picked on them in his own mind, though no outward conflicts with other persons developed. Inwardly he was trying to make everybody over to suit himself. Unconsciously people realized this, though perhaps they did not define the trouble. Barriers were erected in their minds toward him. Since he was being unpleasant to people in his thoughts, it followed that he was less than warm in his personal attitudes. He was polite enough, and managed not to be boorish and unpleasant, but people unconsciously felt coolness in him, so gave him the brush off of which he complained. The reason they did so was because in its mind he had brushed them off. He liked himself too well, and to build up his self-esteem he disliked others. He was suffering from self-love, a chief cure for which is the practice of love for others. He was bewildered and baffled when we outlined his difficulty, but he was sincere and meant business. He practiced the suggested techniques for developing love of others in place of self-love. It required some fundamental changes to accomplish this, but he succeeded in doing so. One method suggested was that at night, before retiring, he make a list of persons he had met during the day, as, for example, the bus driver or the newsboy. He was to picture mentally each person whose name appeared on the list, and as he brought each face up before him, he was to think a kindly thought about that person. Then he was to pray for each one. He was to pray around his little world. Each of us has his own world, people with whom we do business, or are associated in one way or another. For example, the first person outside the family whom this young man saw in the morning was the elevator man in his apartment house. He had not been in the habit of saying anything to him beyond a perfunctory and growled good morning. Now he took the time to have a little chat with the elevator man. He asked him about his family and about his interests. He found that the elevator operator had an interesting point of view and some experiences which were quite fascinating. He began to see new values in a person who to him previously had been a mechanical robot who ran the elevator up and down to his floor. He actually began to like the elevator operator, and in turn the elevator man, who had formed a pretty accurate opinion of the young man, began to revise his views. They established a friendly relationship. So the process went from person to person. One day the young man said to me, "I have found that the world is filled with interesting people and I never realized it before." When he made that observation he proved that he was losing himself, and when he did that, as the Bible so wisely tells us, he found himself. In losing himself he found himself, and lots of new friends besides. People learned to like him. Learning to pray for people was important in his rehabilitation, for when you pray for anyone you tend to modify your personal attitude toward him. You lift the relationship thereby to a higher level. The best in the other person begins to flow out toward you as your best flows toward him. In the meeting of the best in each a higher unity of understanding is established. Essentially, getting people to like you is merely the other side of liking them. One of the most popular men who lived in the United States within the lifetime of most of us was the late Will Rogers. One of the most characteristic statements he ever made was, "I never met a man I didn't like." That may have been a slight exaggeration, but I'm sure Will Rogers did not regard it as such. That is the way he felt about people, and as a result people opened up to him like flowers to the sun. Sometimes the weak objection is offered, that it is difficult to like some people. Granted, some people are by nature more likable than others, nevertheless a serious attempt to know any individual will reveal qualities within him that are admirable, even lovable. A man had the problem of conquering feelings of irritation toward persons with whom he was associated. For some people he had a very profound dislike. They irritated him intensely, but he conquered these feelings simply by making an exhaustive list of everything he could possibly admire about a person who annoyed him. Daily he attempted to add to this list. He was surprised to discover that people whom he thought he did not like at all proved to have many pleasing qualities. In fact, he was at a loss to understand how he ever disliked them after becoming conscious of their attractive qualities. Of course, while he was making these discoveries about them, they, in turn, were finding new and likable qualities in him.